Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Garden Report as August comes to a close here and EuroBasket tips off, which we're expecting Porzingis, a couple guys in this thing. Luka Garza, I know, tried to do this tournament too, and the paperwork just didn't work out. So we're left with Neemias Queta, who might start for the Celtics here, and made it worth our while to wake up early this morning and watch Portugal beat the Czech Republic. Chris Forsberg's here. He watched as well. And this is the guy we're going to be covering here for the next week or two, Chris. And this was a pretty encouraging first performance by him. It was dominant at times from him.
I need to know.
A weak opponent.
I need to know how many DAZN, or I don't even know how you say it, DAZN, and 1841 basketball subscriptions were sold in Boston this morning as we all cobbled to scramble to figure out how to watch Neemias Queta. I think that is a reflection of, like, we were just joking before we hopped on, like, it's been quiet, right? Like, the Celtics have done stuff, but there really hasn't been anything to sink your teeth into since Summer League. And I got to admit, I was like more geeked than I thought to wake up. And I had a few friends that were like, are you tweeting like Neemias Queta highlights at 8 a.m. in the morning? And I said, this could be your starting center. Like, get on board.
Your
like,
first center. He was your
right?
fourth center a year ago, and now he's your first center. That's the
first center this year. And, look.
So what are your Queta thoughts? How do you feel about him last year? How do you feel about him ascending to such a big role this offseason, given how everything went down? Just where are you at on him?
Yeah, so I think obviously, what it almost gets glossed over a little bit, like how important he was championship year. Like, Luke was hurt. People forget Luke was hurt the start of that year. I think they leaned on him, like really pretty much got him his off of the two-way and up to the parent club. I think we know, like, there's some defensive limitations or stuff that he needs to get better at. It was always good when he's your third, fourth center. It's got a lot of that stuff will be in the spotlight more this year, and I'm eager to see how he embraces that. I don't love when people sit there and go, well, like, clearly he can't be a starter because he's a fourth string for a reason and can't do this, can't do that. And I'm like, did we not just experience the Luke Cornett roller coaster of, no one thought Luke was going to be a $40 million player. Well, you give it time, you see what these guys can do, and we'll figure out what he is. And like, I'm excited for that opportunity for him. I think it's a great reflection of how the Celtics have really leaned into the development of some of these guys. And from, you start looking at the two ways through the year with Hauser and now with Queta, it's like there's potential here to get guys that are important to the ultimate goal of winning a title. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm not going to put too much stock in one game today. I'm not going to put too much stock in the limited reps that we've seen and the struggles he's had at various points or the good part either. I want to see what happens, but he's going to get every opportunity. And I think he probably gets first crack at it. Like, if I'm Joe, I just lean heavier into the guys that have been here. And I hope he gets every opportunity to show what he can do.
Yeah, and I think it's been widely publicized how tough Joe was on him. And there were some moments, I think, in that first start in Atlanta, he gets pulled off the court a couple minutes in. There were a couple moments throughout the season where you just saw Missoula digging into him along the sideline. And I think that was two things. And Joe described this too, right? A sign of how highly he thinks of Queta's upside. And an understanding, and he's talked about this a little bit too, different guys needing to be coached different ways, and understanding that Queta can take that. So I think, especially combined with the fact that Queta didn't play a ton late last year, once they got healthier, people form this perception that Joe's not crazy about him. But I actually get the sense that it's the opposite. I think he does like him a lot. I think, as you mentioned, the fact that he's been here for 3 years now is a good sign for him. And I think he likes the fact that he's disciplined, willing to take criticism, and willing to improve. And we've seen him improve, to your Cornette point. That there's some passing here that's untapped with him that showed back to his college days. I think the screening's gotten better, which they're obviously big on. And then it's the defensive part, which there were moments early last year, the Warriors game comes to mind, where he's switching out on Curry, where he's, switching on the perimeter players and holding his own, just using his length there. And there's just so much about him I'm excited about. I don't know where your excitement is. It can't be at Rob Williams level, and mine isn't there either.
I'm going to let you have this one, Bobby. Like, I love hype trains, and I usually like try to get ahead of it and try to get in on like a guy, and I'll find that dude. But like, Queta's your guy, man. You've been like the whole Portugal stuff. Like you leaned into this. I never went to Rob's hometown and hung out and did all that. So you get that. But I'm with you.
That's why I was so excited about today, and also it's the physical part too, right? Because I reported in last month that he had surgery in May, and you don't know how he's going to come back from that. He got hurt during the exhibition slate too, and you saw that, and you're like, oh, geez,
the weird
going to play now.
Yeah.
So he comes right back, and he's doing this off the surgery and off that split. So that's the even more encouraging part of this, is that despite the physical issues he's gone through this summer, he's bouncing back, playing big minutes here in this game. I think he hit 30 and looking stellar. And there's layers to his game that you've seen now too. There was an exhibition where he's hitting a fadeaway jumper.
Think he's going to use that? You think he's going to do that?
I don't know if he's going to use it, but it's nice to see that it's there. And you tweeted it out, right? He hit a 3 to start this game. He stepped into right before halftime a fake handoff pull-up jumper from the elbow. And this is stuff we've never seen him do before, and it's pretty cool to see that it's there.
Yeah, like look, and I'm again, I'm not gonna get like too high. I'm not like, oh, like it doesn't change my outlook of what I
Here
think
come
he's
the
gonna
3-pointers.
Yeah, but I think it's encouraging that thrown into this scenario, we had whether it is the having to take a 3, which he's only, I think, 3 at the NBA level in his career.
0 for 3, yeah.
The pull-up jumper was funny. Like, it's just you didn't see it coming. Like, he just pumped and instinctively went up with it. He had a little like baby hook a few minutes earlier that I was like still reeling from before he even did the pull-up. So I was like, man, like every time I blink, he was doing something good out there. And that's what you want to see. It's a lot like Summer League to me, where you can tell if a guy has made progress, if he's progressed, if he's like belongs. But the opposite is true too. You kind of get exposed if you're not. And I just felt like I just wanted to see him be better. Like, there was no one on the check that should have been able to stop Neemias Queta. Like, they've got some NBA forward, one NBA forward on that team.
V. Krejci,
yeah. But other than that, it was, again, we're going to learn a lot more this next 10 days about Queta when he gets thrown out there against Jokic and KP and all that. And that's going to be fun. Like, again, we don't get this opportunity very often to just like see what it looks like in the summertime. And those will be great reps for him. And I'm glad the Celtics, like, especially after the injury, my fear was we'd have nobody playing. No one getting reps. And so good for him to be out there and get that experience. I think it can only send you into the regular season with that much more confidence. And we'll see where that takes him. Yeah,
for sure. And this obviously being a position of importance on the team after Porzingis' departure.
Holy understatement, Bobby. Like, I mean, have you seen the roster?
Yeah, so that makes it all the more compelling to me. I don't know how compelling fans find this, just given how low-key Queta was through his first 2 years. And I'd say a generally down feeling, given the circumstances, right, of what they lost this offseason and Tatum's injury and all that. So I'm not even sure how engaged the fan base is on something like this right now, but it is significant to me because this is the one guy you can look at that position who's played NBA minutes on this team over a significant stretch. Chris Boucher comes in, and I don't know how you look at him in the context of this roster, but he's played more on the perimeter the last handful of years. I know he's played some center in his career, but I'd have to imagine he's here to play the 4 alongside some of these other guys. He could fill in at the 5 if they need him to, but my best guess right now is he's probably a 4. And then you got Luka Garza, who I like, but just hasn't played NBA minutes at a significant level so far. And that's the biggest question with all these guys, including Queta, is who's going to be able to play 70 games, all of the minutes, everything you need at that position, especially physically, because Queta's played some minutes. Garza's played a very minimal amount. Boucher's played some minutes at that 5, but there's no one here you look at and say, all right, he's going to be there 65, 70, 75 nights this year and do the back-to-backs and everything that you have to do to get through an entire season. The comparison I keep making is Tice. Like, Tice that year played 64 games after Horford left, held up well, played well, And he wasn't spectacular, but he was a consistent force at that spot alongside Cantor, and Grant Williams played a little bit that year too, and Rob. And they had just enough, obviously alongside some stellar perimeter talent, to make the East Finals with what they had at center that year. So there is a case that you can get by this year if everything else works out around them with the cast of centers that they have here. I mean, there's a case that Queta could have a better year given what his physical abilities are than what Tice did that year.
Let's go through like the centers of the Brad Stevens era. It's like Vitor Favarani, Tyler Zeller, Amir Johnson,
Sullinger and Olynyk.
Yeah, like my point is, like, when you have typically Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, or roll it back to the different iterations of those teams, the center has, like, they've sort of gotten by with what they have for center position. It hasn't been a spot that they've felt like they need to maybe aggressively fill until maybe Porzingis, and obviously having Al is the big luxury. Like, he masks a lot of what you do there, even if he was more of a 4 than a 5. And so I think they're comfortable going into the year, even without Tatum out there, saying, like, okay, we'll kind of figure it out at that position. There's still a ton of talent, and maybe it gets to the point where you get out there and none of those guys grasp the opportunity. I'd be surprised if that happened. I think someone invariably, and Queta at the top of that list, will distinguish themselves. And I don't know what that means. Like, that mean Queta's the starting center on your next championship roster? Like, we'll see. Like, we'll see where it goes. Same deal, right? Like, if Luke had come back, like, even Luke is your sort of starting center every day would have. It's different. It's just when you go from 4th or 3rd to 1 or 2, it's just different. And so we're going to find out a lot. I think the general theme of, and I'll probably say it a million times on our programs over the year, is like, everything to me until Tatum's back on the floor is information. Like, what does Jaylen do as a 1A? What does Derek White do with more opportunity? What does Payton do if he's a starter? What does, like, Queta do with opportunity? We're going to find out a lot about every single player on this roster. And that to me means more than necessarily wins and losses. And I think I've told you, like, I'm more optimistic about this team than I think most. But you do need to see it, and the margins are the margin for error is less, and an injury really hurts you. But I just think there's going to be opportunity here, and I can't wait to see. Like, if I'm Queta, Garza, Boucher, if I'm Amari Williams, like, there's opportunity here to show what you can do.
So where are you at on those 3 guys? They bring in Boucher on a minimum, a pleasantly surprising minimum after the Niang trade a couple weeks ago. Not sure why he was still out there and available at that price, but has put up good productivity at about 17 minutes a game or so for that Raptors team, and played a couple positions, veteran, and the per 36 stats are outstanding. So I think there's a lot to love there. I guess the defense isn't amazing, so maybe that, and the age is part of why this happens, but that's what this team need. When we looked at this roster before that happened, it's like, oh, they just don't have enough bodies at center. Even if Queta plays well, there's just not enough depth there. Yeah. Now there's at least a guy who's played a lot of NBA minutes and done it well at that spot alongside him, who can also play the 4 and stagger their lineups a little bit. That signing was awesome, I thought.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it's one of those guys that you sort of watch from afar, and you're like, if you ever had the opportunity, especially at the minimum, is, you feel pretty good about it. Now, do I want a 32-year-old guy eating minutes if it's a development season? Probably not. Like, there'll be a balance they have to strike there. But I also think it's good to have a veteran guy who is going to come in. It's crazy to me. My favorite thing about the Boucher signing is that he was in college with Pritchard at Oregon. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense on, like, any level based on their ages and history. But, like, you kind of,
I didn't even think about that.
Right? It's just like, the one guy was there for a long time, one guy hung out for a long time. It just it'll be fun. Like, I think he'll naturally be a good leader. He's been on 2 championship teams. Like, there's all this stuff. And let's not forget the best thing of all, he bumped Joe in that dust up back in a Raptors game a couple seasons ago, pandemic season or whatever. Rob had to hold Joe back. Like, he's got a little spunk to him. He's going to play hard. And I guess that's even beyond the center position, when you step back, like, they brought in a bunch of guys that are going to just play super hard and see what happens. Like, that could be good, could be bad, there's going to be bad moments, like, invariably. Like, the talent level is different. But I love that they're just going to, like, turn these guys loose and chip on their shoulder. Like, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this team. They're going to be like it's the old Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, like, go ahead, disrespect us at your own cost because they're more talented than you think.
And speaking of the word disrespect, I did it again, and it's happened to me a couple of times this summer already. We're tossing around Garza, Boucher, Kate. Xavier Tillman's still here. And I don't know what to make of that. He didn't play from November on at all effectively. He showed well that first year he got there after the deadline, played finals minutes, and he's still here. And if he can rekindle a percentage of what he showed that first year in Boston, I don't know what the impact of injuries and all the stuff he's dealt with throughout his career had on him last year. I'd have to imagine, given that he didn't even get a look down the stretch, that played a part. He's another factor here if he can get back on the floor and be fresh to start this year. But I don't think we've gotten any indication of where he's at physically.
Yeah, and just like you said, that's the big question mark. I'll be fascinated once we get him on media day. Just like, how much did that play into not getting any time? Like, does Joe trust him?
It was tough. It was tough to watch.
I get it, right? Like, when you think back, like, as much as we everyone used to fret the center depth, like, I love, like, if you went back to the start of last year, people were like, oh boy, there's enough depth at the center position. If KP's missing time and Al needs to be treaded cautiously, yeah, there was plenty. Like Luke and Queta, they held the fort. But certainly now, like, does Tillman, does he have enough? Does Joe have enough trust to put him back out there after it's pretty much a season of which he just, for whatever reason, didn't have the confidence in him. And I hope they open up about that. I like if they are going to keep him, if he does make it through to the in-season roster. I think, again, his salary, if they start making moves and you can aggregate now, he's a guy that could get kind of tossed in there. But look, like, same way, he should feel like, he was pretty highly regarded in Memphis and like, as you said, was helpful on that championship team. There's a guy in there that can help you. And I hope that he uses that as motivation and the Celtics try to tap into whatever he has in the tank if he's healthy.
All right, I want to discuss that too, what could still happen this offseason and the expectations for next year. First, I want to give a shout out to Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash with millions of members. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Best place to win cash while watching sports, and football is nearly back. I'm excited for that. And my thing's always, you build your team going into the season. If you're doing a season-long fantasy team and the injuries strike, you didn't pick the right guys, all kinds of stuff can go haywire, and that's your team for the full season. Prize Picks, you can pick a new team every week, and that's the exciting part of it. 2, 4, 6 players, however many you want to select. Pick more or less on their player projections, yards, touchdowns, rushing yards, all the rest. And you can win up to 2,000 times your cash over there on Prize Picks, doing all that. Debate with your friends, all the fun stuff you can do over on the app when you download the Flex Play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. Can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And I love Taco Tuesday, where player projections up to 25% provide even more value for your lineup. So sign up today, head over there and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Some other great sports going on right now too. Baseball heading down the stretch. You got women's basketball as well. All the stars are playing every night over there. And you can mix and match players from different leagues, which is fun too when you're building your team on any given day. So again, go over there, use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. That's Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use code CLNS, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And of course, check out all our coverage here on CLNS Media. Patriots Press Pass. Week 1 is right around the corner, and they have all the coverage over there. Taylor and those guys do a great job. We're doing some Red Sox coverage down the stretch as well here. It looks like they could potentially make the playoffs, so check out Red Sox Clubhouse as well as our Bruins Rinkside channel and all our Celtics coverage here on CLNS and Celtics All Access. So you mentioned a couple of things, Chris, that I find interesting. Moves that could still happen, aggregating salaries. September 4th, which is actually next week's the date where they can aggregate Simons, who we still haven't heard from, who Brad's given some tepid praise, nothing over the top from him. I mean, I think he's acknowledged what he can do and what he is as a player, but we haven't seen him much. Players have been out and about at events and stuff. I was at Fenway when all those guys were there. He wasn't there. I've heard he's been at the gym, but we just haven't seen or heard much from him, which I think is significant, along with all the reporting that's surrounded him and, where he's at with potentially being part of this team. So wondering where you're at on him. There was a report this week that the Sixers, Nuggets, Bucks might have some interest in him. I didn't see a ton of possible moves there. But
any possible moves? I tried the math, and there's really nothing. No, so
maybe the Bucks, but they have so many guards.
I think the general gist has been like, look, they're pretty honest when they bring guys in that they talk them up, they like them, but they're also. I would be surprised if Brad didn't say to him, we're still trying to figure out what this roster looked like. We have obviously, in a summer that was. That where the directive was not even directive is the wrong word, but where like the obvious goal was to get off the second apron. And we can talk about whether they will eventually think about the luxury tax. It's just, they have to be open-minded to everything. And, part of me, I think, I know, especially from the fan perspective, there's a lot of people that are curious about what Simons could look like in a team, and could Joe push him defensively, and can they find a way to mask some of what was obviously deficient in Portland. But I think they're exploring all options. They have to be opportunistic. They don't have a lot of tradable assets moving forward, right? Like you need they do have some trade exceptions now, but if you're starting to think about what does the next iteration of a championship roster look like, it'd be good if you could. And then this is like way too pie in the sky, but like you got to start thinking about what can you find the next Derek White, like the next mid-salary guy that doesn't clog up too much room, but outperforms the number they're earning and is vital to a title squad. And so just got to figure out if Simons can help you get there. And, again, maybe nothing comes to fruition. Maybe they want to take a look. Maybe, it's not like they are in any rush. Now that they're off the apron, it's like they've got some flexibility and they can decide. And yeah, again, as they come off the apron, and then if they can get below the first apron, like, all of a sudden the ability to make moves is easier, and the amount of money you can take back versus send out, like just all the little stuff that used to go into roster building is reopened. So I just think that's where they're at. It's kind of like a holding pattern, and it doesn't surprise me. Like, I think the Celtics have shown this offseason, there's not going to be press conferences about anything. New owners, coaching extensions, new players.
Simons.
We'll see them on September 29th, and we'll get the lowdown on where they stand. But things could look different by September 29th, or, by November 29th or February 29th for sure. So I just, if you're buying jerseys, maybe tread cautiously.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. If I had a guess, I think he'll be there at the start of training camp. I don't see enough teams across the league that could need him or offer much for him. And I don't think it makes sense to just dump him from your point there in terms of asset management. Why are you attaching picks to this guy when he could start the year, increase his value, maybe even help you long term? And I don't know how much they view him as part of their future, but could you come to a low cost new contract, even if it's after next season? I know it's risky to go to free agency, but there obviously isn't major interest in this guy around the league based on how it's gone. I still don't mind them taking him back in that Holiday deal, because you got off 2 years of Holiday. This guy's still a good player. And I think when that's all we knew was going to happen this offseason, people were generally excited about this player and like the fact that he could bring a different dynamic to them. The 3-point shooting seems to fit into what they do. Here's my thing. I don't know if you've seen this, Chris. There's a big buzz, at least on Twitter, and I don't try to read Twitter as much as like the pulse of the fans as I used to. But a lot of people want to see Simon start over Pritchard for, I don't know, one of three reasons. Well, there's a mix of people who think Pritchard was great as sixth man, so keep him there. There's people who think they need to showcase Simons, so he needs to be in that starting role.
If you're going to showcase him, let him be a bench volume scorer, where the like the Malcolm Brogdons of the world, where you're like, okay, like he towards the end, and some of that was injury related too, but like obviously he had his defensive challenges at the end of the year. Sometimes just being a volume scorer off the bench is the best way to increase that value for a guy like Simons. For me, again, I go back to it. Like, one, I think you need to reward the players that have been in-house. and a part of your
Exactly.
championship core. And two, I think just like we've all had this curiosity, what could Payton do as a starter? And what better time than to find out now? Like,
I have to imagine he has that in him too. And so he spoke to Noah Delzell over at Celtics blog there in the Garden Report, and I was surprised to hear him say it doesn't matter to me. Maybe not because that's the best way to be a team guy and, defer to the coaching staff and what they need to do and all that. But he has always been, just knowing him and talking to him, someone who wants to always try to reach another level and show what he's capable of. And I think he got that across in this comment too, but he did say it doesn't matter to him whether he starts or comes off the bench. And I would guess he starts. Just, again,
the last time we
deference
saw
to guys who have been here, all he's done so far, last year, what he showed, it makes a lot of sense.
I'm trying to think the last time we saw Payton as a starter in
Portland.
Well, I know there was probably some at the end of the year, right? But like, what was the 40-40 game with Derek? Like the last time we saw that backcourt, and Simons only had like 30 in that game. So evidently, clearly, you go with the two that are scoring 40 in that output. I did when I saw Payton this summer, I did say like,
oh yeah, you interviewed him. That's right.
Potentially more minutes, and he said, "I'll play all 48 if he'll let me." And so, I mean, you can take from that what you will. He clearly wants to everybody wants to start games. He's selfless enough where the focus is always going to be on winning and whatever is best for the team. But I think we all know, like, he every time they've given him more, he's responded well and done more. And I just want to see that. I think he's earned the right to show what he can do in that role. And if for whatever reason it doesn't go well, which would be like baffling to me, we'll find out, And again, like I just want to see it, and then we can make big declarations about whether he should be starting or not.
I'm super curious to see how it's going to go, because you've mentioned it when he gets more opportunity, and you see it in the minute counts when he plays 30, 40 minutes, the stats are excellent. And does that translate to a full season? Does that translate when there's more attention on him because Tatum's not out there? Those are all questions we're going to have answered. And I don't think it's an indictment on those guys if they go through some ups and downs, especially early. And I'm expecting that. Like, this team's going to go through some bumps in that early schedule.
See, I'm the opposite. I think it's going to go the opposite way. I think they're going to come out of the gates fast, and people are going to say, "Whoa, this is like, what are they doing? Like, how is this happening?" And then I think they'll like come back to earth a little bit. And again, the margins are thinner. I worry that if,
any injury, they're in trouble.
Yeah, right. Like if Jalen pulls a hamstring, or, Derek's been so reliable and Payton's been so reliable, it's hard to think that they're going to like have an injury that sideline them for a while. And yet, like, invariably, like if something freak happens, it gets a lot more difficult to navigate. And that's just what happens when you don't have a Jason Tatum on the court. And so I wonder if it'll be tougher for them to sustain. But like I said, I go back to it. I think there's, if you just put it in a vacuum, you look at, and this is again the whole theme of what are we going to find out about this, about these guys and the coach and everybody. When Brad had sort of these groups that you're like, oh, you just undervalued. Like they were some of their best teams. Like that Amir Johnson year, they were 14 games over 500.
You're loving the Amir Johnson reference.
I know, like I'm just saying, like, guy had the slowest 3-point release in human history, and they were still thriving with this guy. And so I'm eager to see what Joe can do with this mix of guys. Because if you just put on paper that you have Payton, Derek, Jalen, and Sam's still here and Queta's developed, like I just feel like that's still in an Eastern Conference that isn't overwhelming, a very good team.
For sure. The injury factor is going to be huge for them and others. There's some swing teams like Philadelphia and Milwaukee. And when you stack up the East, even Indiana, who's missing Halliburton this year too, a big separating factor between those 4 or 5 teams in the middle of the East probably is going to be health and how much that roster stays together throughout the course of the year. So I give a little deference to the Miamis and other teams of the world who are healthier to start this year, even Milwaukee. For Indiana, Boston, even Philly, who knows who's going to show up to Boston on opening night from that team. And they play them 3 times in the first month there, which could be a break. I just don't know how to position those groups. And as you said, if everybody's healthy on the Celtics and they're all the best versions of themselves, there's definitely an upside of middle of the East and being more competitive in the playoffs than many expect right now. But there isn't that championship ceiling this year. There isn't that elite East standing possibility, at least to me. Who knows what could happen here? But That's why I think a lot of fans, to your point earlier about how they're going to add that next piece, that next Derek White, look at it and say, it's going to be the draft. And that's where it gets tricky because I don't think this team's going to tank. But mid-season, are there going to be some tough decisions given where they are in the standings, given what they might want to accomplish from a draft perspective, where they might start to position themselves, whether for development purposes, as you said, or just acknowledging what their situation is, make some moves that might put them a little further back this year for some long-term benefit there. I don't think anyone would have a problem with that when the time comes. But to me, I just think you go into the year intending to compete because the teams that have tanked, to me, have not reaped the benefits of it. And I don't even know if it's possible with this roster to tank when you have the Brooklyns of the world and the Washingtons and Utahs and teams that are doing it on that level. So you don't have to get to that level, obviously, to get high in the draft, as Dallas just showed. But I'm adverse to the idea of tanking. I think you try to get as much out of this team in this year as you can and then make decisions on the fly.
100%. Like the number one thing they do over there at the Auerbach Center is they worry about the next day. You know, better each day. You hear Tatum saying it now. Like, I think that should be the theme of the year. Just every day, get a little bit better and see where it takes you. And like you said, you might cross a bridge where you get to December or January and you're like, this isn't going anywhere. This doesn't have even, the opportunity with the guys that are remaining to be competitive. Do you have to have hard conversations about what you do from there? But I just know that, Brad Stevens, his history suggests that they do not entertain the idea of going backward to go forward. And maybe they do have to think about that harder this year, especially with the draft going to be as good as it is. And
I mean, look at his first year to, throw a blast from the past again. They were super competitive early. Things were going decently given the expectations. And it was Danny who pulled the plug on a lot of different things and positioned them to be in the lottery that year and pick smart. So I'm sure Brad, especially given the roster and some of the holes they have here and just the whole way this offseason's gone, understands at the very least. And they've said it themselves that this isn't going to be a title team again. They're not going to be back on the road to winning until Tatum's back. And I wonder where you're at there. Is that a possibility this year? Or are you just of the mindset that he's probably out?
It's so funny, like, especially when it happened,
that's the number one question I keep getting asked this offseason. And I have no idea how to answer it.
And you understand why, right? Like, I mean, like it's the key to whenever they're going to turn this thing back up. So here's what I tell everybody. First off, I say I am 100% not a doctor. If you spend any amount of time reading about the guys that have come back quickly from it, he checks a lot of the boxes, right? Had the surgery quickly, got the little extra support in there to help expedite the recovery. There are running backs in the NFL. I think it's Cam Akers that were back in 6 months. Mm-hmm. And which is crazy when you think about in a sport like football being back out there. Now, he was terrible at the end of that year, but in basketball, it's actually pretty, even though you'd say naturally, oh, football, there's so much more contact, all that. No, basketball is so much is in that legs that I worry. And I think they will be prudent about how they bring him along. But I also 100% know that Jason Tatum is like a maniac and that he's going to attack this rehab process, that all the indications that we've seen from afar in his little video are that he's hitting checkpoints probably ahead of schedule. You heard Brad say over the summer, right? He's ahead of where he should be, and he was out of that boot pretty quick. You watch the videos, we'll know because DeJounte Murray just posted that video of him dunking.
That was awesome to watch.
And so Tatum's 2 months, 3 months behind that. And so if you told me that Tatum will be dunking again before Christmas, how does that start changing whether you believe he can get back? And it's just hard for me to believe that he won't be in a position, if nothing else, but to be out there on the practice floor with these guys and ramping up activity. And I get what people say when they're like, oh, maybe it's good to get him out there and shake some rust. I still think you got to tread cautiously. You don't want to compound what's already been a difficult season, which is weird to say when it hasn't even started. But the fact that you don't have him going into the year is complicated matters. You don't want to exacerbate things. So I just think Rich Gotham had the perfect line. He's going to put us in position to make a tough decision. Right. And, I don't envy being Brad and Joe and all those guys in that situation, because it was me,
You know he's going to want to be out there.
100%. But
Yeah.
maybe the team's not in a position where it makes sense to put him back out there. Maybe maybe there's other ways to let him just kind of ramp up behind the scenes and use practices. And, I know it's going to be hard. Like, he's just going to want to be the guy who came back quick and didn't lose anything. And, look, if they get to this point where they think that's feasible, that's why you don't put that's why you don't put any limitations on what he can do. And I get why the Pacers were in a hurry to say, like, Halliburton, hey, he's out. It does relieve some sort of mental stress about, like, everything, and there's no questions, and that does help. As someone who lived through is Gordon Hayward going to come back this year?
So I was just going to go there.
Yeah, like,
I'm already anticipating what life's going to be like for us starting even early this year. Every single day when we see him, it's going to be videos, and the hype train's going to start, and fans are going to be like, here he comes.
Yeah.
And the team's just going to be pushing back against it every step of the way. And we're going to have to be asking Joe, where's he at? And it's going to be,
I don't think they'll push back. I think they embrace those moments. I think that's good for everybody involved. It's catnip for fans,
invigorating,
and I think they want him to push, and to a certain extent, right? Like as long as it's healthy, and like that in a season that could feature some turbulence because of the if things don't go well, probably not the worst to have Tatum's return as something that can be sort of the beacon of, hey, better days ahead, as Tatum keeps saying.
So you mentioned moves that could still come here. I haven't heard a ton about this, but I keep seeing the reports floating, and maybe Boucher's addition slammed the door on this, but the teams most connected in various reports this offseason of Ben Simmons, who's still out there, have been New York, which makes some sense. He lived there. He was on the Nets. They could probably use him. The Kings, who are doing Kings things, and the Celtics, who have had passing interest in him before, from what I can remember. Just, reports that were out there in different years, back to the Philly days. I don't know what to make of this, and I've never been a big fan of Simmons for all the reasons anyone can think of. But amazingly enough, I feel a little different this year. I think this is an opportunity for him that maybe no other team has. Kings maybe would play him a little bit. Knicks, I think he'd be buried. Clippers buried him a little bit late last year. I think he could potentially play a lot on the Celtics. The stakes are low this year, so there won't be this enormous pressure on him to be a consistent, significant contributor. And the things he does, even at the stages of his career where he's miles from the all-star player we watched in Philly, are still things that this team needs in Tatum's absence, and playmaking.
Let me cut you off though. What's the upside?
You bring him in on a minimum, and he has a good year for you. And maybe after that, there's a desire for him to stay for whatever they're going to do next. Now, again, you don't need to patch every hole this season for all the reasons we're talking about here. But to me, he does all the things you're missing right now. Some additional playmaking for the bench, perimeter defense, which I think they badly need, rebounding, which in Tatum's absence, they're going to need a lot of. I just think he brings a lot to the table, and maybe I'm being over optimistic about what he is at this point. But the per 36 numbers were solid for him last year, and he's not going to score. He's not going to shoot a ton of shots. He's going to do all the frustrating things, including miss games that have made him who he is at this point. But I think it works for this team where there just aren't major expectations this year. I think there's minutes for him. I think he helps. And I think the upside is this goes well, and he wants to be part of whatever they're going to do next year. And the best version of Ben Simmons to me is still compelling for a team like this, where there's not a ton of pressure and there's not a ton of expectations from him to perform. I can't imagine him on that Knicks team with the kind of pressure they're going to be under this year.
So let me put it this way. In small moments, I can convince myself of just everything you said. And I love a great reclamation story. And there've been players the Celtics have brought in that have kind of turned things around and found their way, like Evan Turner. Right. Like, if I'm going to keep going back to the 2014-15 seasons, a guy who would pretty much been discarded by two teams and was looking for something, but he also had like a personality and Midwest sensibilities with Brad that just like it jived. I just don't know. So
Brad signing off on this is still something that I have to imagine that I can't at the moment.
Yeah. And I don't know. every time I see a report that there are like 9 teams interested in Ben Simmons, I'm like, so everyone's interested, but no one is like tripping all over themselves. Like, can we just like maybe trace back where these reports are coming from? And I wonder where he'll end up. And I do hope that there's a serviceable NBA player in there, like with warts, but like who does all the things you laid out. And this team needs a lot of that. Just don't know if they need it this year from him. And if they would think the situation was different and they were just trying to fill a gap until Tatum's healthy, or if they needed a year with someone, like I could probably convince myself more. I would hate to take away from the development of any guy that you do believe is going to be long-term on this team because you want to roll the dice on a guy who, even if he did have a good season, doesn't have to be back here and who might take a payday.
That's the question for me is how do you get him in here? Because they do have a roster spot. They don't typically fill that last one. You could waive Walsh on a non-guarantee, but is that one of the guys you want to take another look at this year? You had a good summer league and will actually get to play a little bit this year, I'd imagine. So I don't knock anyone who wants to see him. And Shireman needs some minutes, and Amari Williams, someone's thrown in here. Like, there's definitely some guys who would block, and there's some overlap with Boucher too that might make this a past discussion that's already gone. But to me, I think it's worth a discussion at the very least, and I wouldn't mind if they do it. And again, this is a guy I've wanted nothing to do with in the past because of where the Celtics were, and they're in a different place now. I think they're in a position to try some stuff like this. I like the Turner comparison. I'm sure there's some others we could think about who have come through here and been reclamation projects and got their career back on their feet a little bit. So let's see what happens there. It doesn't seem imminent, doesn't seem likely, but it's still something that's floating around. The Simon stuff, same deal. I'm still expecting him to be there when training camp begins, which when September calendar turns over the next couple of days here, we'll be here before we know it. Thanks to Chris Forsberg for stopping by. Definitely wanted to get him on after I saw him live tweeting the Queta game this morning because this might be the
only game I sit there and watch from beginning to end. You cannot guarantee that I'm going to be like all in, but I will, with the competition he's going to play, I will pop back up. I paid my money. I will watch as many.
You have to see it there now.
It's
fun, man. I love these years. I love the fact that we get one pretty much every summer, whether it's the Olympics or World Cup or whatever it might be, to see these guys in the international competitions. Because like even just being around him and the anticipation out there this summer in Portugal, like it's cool stuff. And these guys really do care about it. Like Porzingis is out there playing when he went through everything he did and probably could just mail it in this summer. But, they find it that important. And there's that much pride attached to this thing for players from European countries or wherever they are in the world. So Portugal won today. Their next game is up on Friday, 2 p.m. locally here on the East Coast, which would be nice for everyone, against Nikola Jokic and Serbia. And then on Saturday against Alperen Şengün and Turkey, back-to-back for Portugal, Friday and Saturday. So, and then Porzingis on Monday. So a lot of good stuff coming out there for Portugal and Queta. So you can stream that on the EuroBasket site. They have a subscription you can buy for $20 over there if you want to watch it. We'll have continued coverage of his competition and however long Portugal ends up going out there. Check out all of Chris's work over on. You still doing the off-season pod?
We actually have a rare pod popping up tomorrow, but it's not a lot of not a lot of game stuff. We'll dive into if the Neemi hype train is still running next week. I promise you, Bobby, I will do a segment on Neemi, and we'll deep dive. I might need you to come on and give me the rundown.
All right, more than happy to. And of course, check out Chris as always over on NBC Sports Boston once the season gets going again. Again, subscribe to all of our channels here on CLNS Media, Celtics All Access, Bruins Rinkside, Patriots Press Pass, as well as Red Sox coverage and Celtics All Access. And check out Prize Picks. Football is back next week at $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup over there. Just use the code CLNS. For Chris Forsberg, I'm Bobby Manning. This has been a Wednesday edition of the Garden Report, and we will talk to you probably next week. Peace.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way. Let's slide Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke